Hello, welcome to Things That Don't Change, where we uh, endeavor to view an ever-changing world through the lens of eternity. I think that was
Hello?
the
Yeah, that is it. Yeah, you're good.
awesome. Normally Tommy takes care of that, so it's kind of just like how you say, yeah, it's one of those things that happen. It's not really something I pay too much attention to, just because of my own personality disposition. But speaking of, let's talk about something that has absolutely no personality, but mimics having a
Hmm.
personality, and that would be artificial intelligence.
Yeah, it's sneaky because it can trick you, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. That was a pretty good segue. I'm kind of impressed with myself.
yeah. No, that's good. We're definitely keeping that in.
How's everybody
Um,
doing? You can't answer right now, but maybe leave a comment. That'd be nice to hear from you guys. Um, just to quickly preface the conversation we want to have, obviously, if you're not living under a rock, you've been exposed to some form of AI schlop on your social media feed, and it could be anything from cats accidentally turning into giant monsters and they have to fight each other to
yeah,
all sorts of fake Reddit stories
Shrimp
that you
Jesus.
Trump Jesus, exactly. Trump and Elon singing to a Lana Del Rey song,
Oh yeah,
all sorts of stuff. And we kind of wanted to touch how that's currently affecting the culture, the current abuses we're seeing in artificial intelligence, and how do we steward this new technology, and how do we approach it in a way that isn't scared but is weary or leery of it until we kind of figure out how to properly incorporate this new tool into our day-to-day, because ultimately that's where we're heading. What are your immediate thoughts, Chris?
yeah. I mean, AI is one of those things. Like I grew up when I was. I mean, I grew up back in the days of like dial-up internet, so I know early days of internet a bit. But as I grew up, the internet was kind of coming more into itself. So by the time I was actually in a place to use it, it was just kind of it was there. So
Yeah.
it was just part of the milieu of the world at that point. But AI has come later, so I guess I have a bit of more of a knee-jerk reaction as to how older people might feel with the internet, where it's like, oh, well, I'm not so sure about this, so maybe this isn't a good idea. Maybe we should just avoid it altogether. So I definitely feel that way towards AI, but like, let's face it. I mean, this is the direction we're going. It's going to become more prevalent whether we like it or not. So yeah, I think it is important to kind of discuss it because I think there are ways that it can do a lot of good and a lot of positive things like the internet, but at the same time, there's also a lot of pitfalls which if we're not aware of, as we're kind of investigating this, it's going to cause a lot of issues like the internet has, right? I
Yeah.
always like to think
Yeah.
back to like the printing press. That's something that we all are just take for granted at this point. Printed books, but back in the printing press, it was the same thing. It was so new, and then the Protestant Reformation was able to really kind of like explode because of suddenly you could just have your own Bible, everyone could have one, and you could just kind of
Yeah.
print what you wanted. So it's a revolutionary time in many ways, and yeah, figuring out how best to navigate that is extremely important
Yeah.
because there's plenty of ways it could go wrong.
Certainly. And I think right now AI is still at the point as of July 2025, it might change in August, where
Honestly, it might change next week.
yeah, exactly. It's still a little indistinguishable from reality. So
Yeah,
even like Google's VO3, while is incredible in terms of like its rendering and realistic people and emotions and voices, while it looks very realistic, it still sort of has that AI polish to it. So
yeah,
if you're careful, you can still see it. And the fear for me is like something becoming too lifelike, where it's no longer in uncanny valley territory,
yeah,
where it's now you can't distinguish between the two. So a main fear for mine is like fraud, because right now we use voice recognition and facial recognition. If
yeah,
something can mimic that, that can get into your personal data, all sorts of nasty things that they can do. That we have to be cognizant and learn how to fight before everybody's money is stolen. But there's also this really weird thing that's being realized where we're so brain rotted from the past 20 years of the internet. Brain rot has just exploded. And where something
So,
would,
real quick,
yeah,
as the millennial here, I understand brain rot is like an internet term and that's used.
yeah.
I don't really know what it means. So, could you please enlighten me to exactly what brain rot is?
Okay, you're a millennial.
Yes.
Do you remember Smosh?
Yes.
Brain rot.
Okay. Yeah. I get it.
Brain
I get
rot.
it.
Brain rot.
Simple. Simple.
It adds. I apologize.
Now, for anyone who's older than me, they're not going to get that at all.
No, not at all. But it's anything that does not add value to you, and it's like not even really funny. It's just stupid, and it sort of
Yeah.
dumbs you down.
So it's just kind of general internet humor of the past since the
Yeah,
internet's been created. I mean,
yeah,
it
and
hasn't turned brain rot now, but we all kind of experience that if you've been on the internet for 5 seconds, right?
oh yeah, entirely. Like the minion memes now. That's brain
Yeah.
rot.
Yep. Yep.
So before, brain rot was sort of like you'd have to do a stupid skit, or you'd have to do like a caption, or like a picture with a caption that really makes no sense. Now you can realize brain rot with videos. So it's exponentially getting worse. I've literally seen videos of it'll take a song like Rihanna's Shine Bright Like a Diamond, and it'll turn every note into a meow. So go meow, 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 meow. And the video itself will be like two cats fighting, like over custody of their child, and they're going to
As cats do.
court, as cats do, and they're going to court, and they're fighting for this child, and then one of them starts beating up the baby, and it's like,
Oh my
or
gosh. What even is the internet anymore?
I don't know, or like, oh, like a dad cat will be a lot of it is cat related videos. Like people are making animated cats that anthropomorphic. And the dads are always like really, really, really buff, and then the moms are always like have that slender, curvy look. So it's like anthropomorphic, but like exaggerated caricatures of the human form. Uh, and like the dad will be throwing the baby up and down, but the fan will be on, so we'll throw the baby into the fan, and there'll just be blood everywhere, and then it's like this
Gosh. Yeah.
huge like big thing, and then they'll have like they'll go to the funeral, they're all like distraught, and then they'll go to they'll find out they're pregnant again, and the dad will accidentally cook the baby a second time. So it's like it's like
You know,
it's stuff that adds nothing
yeah,
to your
it's
life.
it's interesting because as you describe it, like I can picture the exact type of you. Have you never seen this specific version? I can picture the exact type of video that this
Yeah,
is because these used to be big back in the day, like this surrealist animated humor that's really
yeah,
dark. You know
yeah.
that seems very light, but then has like these violent, dark kind of deaths and things like that. And it's like, wow, we've changed so much, yet we haven't changed at all.
I
We're
know.
still doing the same thing, except now instead of needing to animate it, I can just type it into the
Prompt.
whatever the Google or whatever the AI thing is, and have AI just create it for me, which is just
Exactly.
crazy.
Which now means you don't need to have talent anymore to create this dark humor surrealism video, which now means there's so much of it, and you're now inundated with what is it? Happy Tree Friends?
Yes, yeah,
What was
that,
that?
that,
Was
that was one of those that was like super like seemed fun, but really like super dark and bloody.
yeah, yeah. Was that what it was called? Happy Tree Friends?
That was at least one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, but crazy stuff. Oh, I gotcha. Millennial brain rot. Something the unicorn. What was his name? Charles the
Well, yeah,
unicorn.
Charlie the Unicorn. Yeah,
Charlie
yeah,
the
yeah.
unicorn. Brain rot.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So just trying to tackle that from many different angles. So as we're sort of like coming into this world where there's so much AI schlop, because there is so many individuals who unfortunately are brain rotted, I being one of them, I find this sort of humor hilarious now just because I've been so exposed to it, and it's almost meta because I can now like guess what's going to happen just knowing how these sorts of formats work. So
Yeah.
it's humorous to a certain level, and that's the tricky thing about it. We're overexposed to something that doesn't add any value, but we're treating it like it does add value. So that's one of the major pitfalls, at least on social media.
Which I feel like is just another symptom of kind of the subjectification of, whatever it is, art, humor, whatever. Just
Yeah,
like, well, it doesn't, there's no such thing as an objectively good YouTube video or an objectively beautiful this or that video, art,
yeah,
whatever it is. So yeah, this weird thing that might not add any value. Well, somebody might like that as like a quick laugh. So that's just as valid as the I don't know, the YouTube, I keep going with the YouTube videos, but the YouTube video that somebody put a lot of time and effort in. And
yeah.
spent hours of editing to create kind of this really funny, witty vignette into something. It's like, well, that is the same value as the AI slop that somebody threw together in 5 minutes. At least that's I feel like how we treat it, right?
Exactly, exactly. It's kind of terrible, and where we're getting into a lot of crazy territory too is art. Like you have a whole subset of individuals who call themselves AI artists, where all they're doing is putting in a prompt to get a certain response, and they're taking ownership of that.
Yeah.
Like, for example, we're both writers, so I think this is going to be a pretty good analogy. If we're directing an artist to do the cover of our book, would we then claim that that art is inherently ours because we gave the direction? We might have acted as an art director, but we were not employing any skill to render the image.
Yeah.
Therefore, how can an AI artist be an artist and not a director?
Right.
So,
And then there's the question of who actually does own that then, because is it the intellectual property of OpenAI or something like that? In a similar vein, like just a couple of days ago, I was playing around ChatGPT, asking it questions just about AI, like literally just seeing its thoughts about what's the emerging technologies that got into like a little discussion, if you could even call it that, about AI, and then it got into like just kind of like like story ideas, of like a world's if AI isn't checked, like what would happen in the world, and it was really interesting just to see what it was coming up with. But I'm like, if I seriously use this as like a prompt for a story, would this be my material? Because I'm kind of getting it from ChatGPT, which is owned by OpenAI.
mhm.
So would this be OpenAI's property? Like how does that even work? Like that just seems like such a murky territory legally.
So it entirely is very murky. Right now, as far as intellectual property rights, in order for you to have like intellectual rights over a property of yours, you need to be actively the sole creator behind it. So where it gets murky with AI art, writing or art itself is how much in like human input is there versus machine input. If there's more machine input, then it's basically right now all of the AI companies are open source, so they're not claiming copyright over any materials that are
Right.
created.
True.
So it'd be considered public domain. That could change. And that's kind of like one of the scary things. So if you're writing or doing art with AI, all your work might just be taken
Right.
away if a new law is passed or new terms and regulations that you sign over, not reading it, saying that all past work that you've done with this thing, yeah, at a certain percentage is actually owned now by, let's say, OpenAI or Meta or all the different other sources. So if you're going to use the tool of large language models for your artistic work, use it more so for editing,
Yeah.
like grammar, and then also giving feedback for prose. I find it to be very helpful. In fact, I've actually refined my prose and really the rhythm of my prose, sending it samples of my work so that it can read through it and then say where certain wording is clunky and then where certain areas have a lot of flow. And I've actually been able to enhance and really find my writing style using this tool for feedback, because let's be honest, to hire an individual to like do that one-on-one training, it's quite expensive.
Yeah.
And it's time consuming because you have to set up appointments, you have to wait for feedback. But with this thing, we can sort of just go back and forth. I can give sample, it can give reworks on how I could change the writing, how I can make writing more vivid. And I found that even when I'm just writing pen to paper, just going, my rhythm's a lot better. I'm clearer. And that primarily boils down to I have not traded my artistic artistic integrity for the ease of AI.
Yeah.
It's incorporated, but it's I haven't lost that, and it's used properly as a tool for feedback.
Right. And I think that's key.
Yeah, exactly, 100%, 100%. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm kind of, I guess, kind of in the same boat. That's an interesting idea, kind of using it for the editing, because yeah, that kind of takes the AI's doesn't have personality, but it kind of takes that what it might create or throw together and removes that whole thing from the process and just has it focusing on what you're doing and trying to
Exactly.
to help
Yeah.
better what you're doing. So yeah, in that way, it's very much like using a tool, like using a spell check, like a more advanced spell check, or like
Yeah.
Microsoft Word suggesting, oh, maybe you fix the
Grammarly.
formatting here. Yeah, exactly. So that's really an interesting way to use it. I
And
gotta
not for
consider
nothing
that.
too, a lot of copy editors
Yeah.
go through your prose anyway and clean up a lot of your prose. So it's not something that's out of the norm for authors already.
Right. You're just
Yeah,
using a program that can work faster and cheaper than needing to hire somebody, which again, you
essentially.
can probably get into the discussion about like whether that'll take away jobs from actual
Yeah.
editors. And that's maybe a whole other topic, but for the writer themselves, I think that that's
Yeah.
an interesting way to do it.
So here's where we're sort of that you open the door to a really interesting topic,
Hmm.
taking away individuals' jobs.
Yeah.
Like how much can AI replace the human being in a workflow?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are scared, and I think a lot of people are right in that fear because being in recruiting myself since the emergence of AI, at particularly administrative work, those requirements are like non-existent.
Mm.
You get them like I'd be getting like maybe 20 requirements a month.
Hmm.
I'm down to maybe 4 if I'm lucky. It's scary and it's rough. And I think that a lot of like the data entry, scheduling, and reception type roles, maybe not like the front facing reception type, but more so on the scheduling and filing side, are going to get replaced by these agents that can automate those tasks and save money. But that sort of brings up to, well, what's going to happen to those individuals who lost their job?
Yeah.
Yeah. And looking back at prior technological revolutions, like the Industrial Revolution,
Hmm.
for example, we had this very, very fun discussion about clogs and where that term came from, and what's the word to destroy something intentionally? Sabotage,
Yes. Yes.
sabotage. Like the etymology of that word, Tommy once explained on the show, being that these individuals would take their wooden clogs and they throw it into machines to sabotage them.
Right.
So to sabotage, you're throwing your your shoe into the machine. And why were they doing that? Because they all lost their farming jobs because we had largely automated farming with these huge machines that could be powered to run. But what happened to them? They ended up moving to cities and getting administrative jobs.
Right. It's just. I mean, the workforce evolved. It changed, um, and with a lot of course, issue and struggle along the way. I mean, like, um, this is around the same time that, well, obviously you had a lot of revolutions in Europe. Socialism became a big thing. Communist Manifesto was written, which, like, I remember I read the Communist Manifesto because I was just curious to actually, like, instead of just saying, oh, well, this is communism, it's like, let me actually read the thing to see kind of like what they believe. And it's interesting because I think Marx had a lot of good insights about like the issues of that era of the Industrial Revolution, the way that unfettered capitalism was kind of depriving the worker of their rights and different things like this. But he came to all the wrong conclusions as to how to fix that,
Yeah.
which is why I think that the probably one of the most prophetic recent popes we ever had was Pope Leo the 13th, because then he comes out with Rerum Novarum in 1891, I think, and 93, 91, 93, somewhere in there, and like he went after socialism, but also went after kind of a type of capitalism that kind of abuses the worker or doesn't give the worker proper rights. And through that came Catholic social teaching. So I guess that's just all to say. Like, I think we're at another one of those periods where we're hitting this revolution. It started with the internet, and now is kind of culminating with this AI, where yeah, we really need to consider what this is going to do to the workforce going forward, what it's going to do to jobs, and how this is going to evolve, and then make sure that we're aware of the ways that this could, I guess, be a bit, well, I guess negative. Like in what ways are people getting, what's the word? Uh, People's dignities aren't being respected, and that's why I think that's something Pope Leo the 14th, very prophetic name that he chose,
Yeah.
very intentional. I think that's something he's going to be focusing on a lot in his
Well, I
faith.
think one of the first documents he said he wants to work on is like AI ethics,
I can't wait for it.
which I think is going to be awesome.
Yeah, I'm here for it.
A whole encyclical on AI that I can't wait.
Especially if he can
Personally.
get that out like soon. Like Rerum Novarum
Yeah.
took like a couple of decades to come to fruition, but like this is the beginning of the AI revolution, like the past like couple of years. So to have something from the church this
Well, I'll tell
relatively
you what.
quickly,
I'll tell you what. Using ChatGPT, he could probably get it out in a couple of days.
yeah. I was talking to ChatGPT, the other day, right? And I'm having this conversation, and I'm talking. We're just going through like the future, if in this world where everyone's like sucked in AI and all these things, and the ChatGPT starts talking about like I almost said he, which it's just such a weird thing, but ChatGPT is going on about like and then maybe the resistance movements will believe these different things about why AI wouldn't be as good, and then I decided to ask it. I'm like, what would the religion say? Like I feel like Catholicism might be a little more like hesitant about it. Orthodox Judaism might be very much like opposed to it. Buddhism and this might think this and that. So I'm like, what do you think what the religions would say? And then it comes out with, oh, well, yeah, you're right about this, and kind of lays it all out, and then kind of gets into the Catholicism a bit. And he's like, yeah, and then Pope, so and so would probably come out with this writing or something that would talk about the ethics of this, and then it asked me, do you want me to give you a sample text for a document that the Pope would have written? And I responded, I'm like, I think it's best to leave the encyclicals to the successor of St. Peter, and just kind of move on.
Well, that actually kind of segues perfectly into my next point. What happens to the human being? Because what is artificial intelligence really? I mean, is intelligence the right word to describe it? Is it self-preserving in the same way that intelligent life is self-preserving? Not really. It only performs tasks that it's programmed and what the guardrails are.
Right.
So is it artificial intelligence or artificial predictive perception, right? It's more perceptive than it is intelligent, meaning that it can mostly accurately predict what's coming next based off of the language using ones and zeros. It's basically a giant if-then chain.
Yeah.
Ultimately,
Right.
ultimately. So it's saying, would you like a sample encyclical is trying to predict your next move.
Yeah. And it always does
Right.
that, which is just so okay. Like it's interesting how it's meant to just kind of continue the dialogue,
Yeah.
in that way
Yeah.
to give you something a little more to kind of latch into. Would you like this or a bit of this? But yeah.
Yeah, but that's the interesting point is if you're replacing in like real intelligence with a predictive or a prediction model, are you really getting a proper trade-off? Because when I speak to engineers and they're talking about like using different models for coding, you basically still, like as an engineer, have to watch every line that it gives you. It's just drafting a whole bunch of line for you that you tell it to draft so that you don't have to draft the whole thing, but you still have to read every single individual line. It's like a junior engineer. It's not at the point where it actually has that intelligence to really know the difference between what's right and what's wrong. It just predicts what we want.
Yeah. And it's tricky because you bring that up and somebody might say, oh, well, at some point it'll get to that point. And it's like, yes, it'll become more sophisticated maybe or quicker or something. But like, again, intelligence isn't something material. I know that's
Yeah.
kind of like a like you know nowadays you might consider it that way because we're just in a very materialistic time and place and culture, but like the brain isn't a computer. Like we can liken some things to like how like a computer does, or say you're computing something like a math equation or something, but your brain isn't actually a computer. It's a biological thing. I mean, there's processes there, but it's I don't know. We know so little about the brain, which is I guess one thing. Just as in science currently, but yeah, it's
We reason
hard.
to a conclusion rather
Yeah,
than predicting a conclusion.
right. And that reasoning isn't just built off of raw empirical data and facts. That's also built off of emotion, off of experience. There's just so much more there. Um,
Yeah,
that goes beyond what a computer I think would ever be capable of.
hmm
It might be able
exactly.
to fake that, like trick
Oh
you,
yeah,
but that's still not the just because it's tricking you doesn't mean it's a thing. Like the Turing test, just because it replicates a good simulation of a person, doesn't mean that it's actually at the same intelligence of a person.
yeah, entirely. You hit the nail on the head
Yeah.
on that one. Um, yeah. So where does that leave the human being
Hmm.
in the new workflow? So I think
It's a good question.
Yeah, well, I think looking at the Industrial Revolution, that work was replaced. So now we had this huge demand for people to audit the machine's work, which created a whole bunch of administrative roles and roles within administration to support other administrative roles. I think there's going to be a huge increase in auditing type roles where you're auditing machines. I think that's kind of where things are going. We might get to the point where we're seeing these huge layoffs, and then productivity is just going to plummet. Because again, you need that human touch in order to
Right.
make things actually work.
I mean, I'll probably have to get a little, they say, but probably a little worse before it gets better because we have to get to the
Yeah,
point where we realize this is untenable and then reevaluate our processes,
yeah,
how we approach it.
yeah. It's definitely a scary time, especially
Yeah.
with like every week it feels like there's a huge new advancement within artificial AI, and it's only going to get crazier once quantum computing
Mhm.
becomes
Yeah.
into the mix. With qubits that are in superposition, where they're both zeros and ones at the same time. They did this really crazy. They described it like a wormhole. It's not actually bending space and time, but because the qubits are in superpositions, they can instantly transfer data from one qubit to another qubit, like at crazy distances, like almost instantly.
Yeah.
And they described it using the term wormhole, but they didn't make a quantum wormhole.
Yeah.
But it's like crazy implications like that, because what does that mean for money transfers? If you're using qubits, that alone changes so much.
Will that mean if I deposit something online on Saturday, I won't have to wait until Monday to get it online?
Yes, that is what
Nice.
that means. That is
Yeah.
what that means. It means that countries can send money instantly between each other. Banks can send money instantly between each other. Loans can be administered uh, instantaneously. Before, that was like one of the main functions of this one cryptocurrency done by Ripple called XRP. Its whole catch was it's like almost instantaneous money transfers. But now with qubits, you can do the exact same thing, and that's going to become widespread. So why would you transfer your money into XRP when you can just do the forex? Not the forex. Yeah, it's forex. It's foreign exchange instantaneously with the qubits anyway. It's crazy implications in terms from the world stage,
Yeah.
and it's definitely a wild time to be alive.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it definitely is. And yeah, I mean, again, like I said, it's probably going to get a bit worse before it gets better, because we're humans and we need to burn our hand on the stove before we realize that the stove's hot.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, like get some people like calling for whether it's legislation or whatever it is, but you're not going to get a whole lot of that until, all right, we have an issue here. Um, Hopefully not. Hopefully Pope Leo will come out with his encyclical. Everyone will realize, hey, the Pope's so smart, and we'll all amend our ways and convert to Catholicism. That'd be awesome. But yeah. So I mean, that being said, though, I don't know. What do you think for the future? What do you What types of things do you think, going forward with this, that should be put in place? Safeguards, maybe, or regulations. I mean, that's a hard question to ask. I wouldn't even necessarily know, but like, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there already is some sort of safeguards currently, and that being that it's open source. Now, you get some drawbacks with it being open source, meaning everybody has access to this technology.
Right.
But the positive to that is everybody has access to this technology and it can't be monopolized as of right now,
Yeah.
unless these sources close themselves off, which I don't think would be for the betterment of society. Just because now we're in competition with China and their
Mm.
AI technology is exploding over there too. So we kind of have to do the same thing. So if we weren't using our AI, we'd be using China's anyway. So that is a pseudo safeguard already, but it's like giving everybody a gun.
Mm.
You know
Right.
what I mean? When you give everybody a gun, everybody has the capability to hunt and protect themselves from other individuals, protect their families. You have that tool, you have that at your disposal, just like everybody else. So you're on an even playing field. But at the same time, you also gave Jeffrey Dahmer a gun.
Mm. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there are going to be some bad actors, and there are going to be individuals who use it for less than savory things that
Yeah.
I'm not going to discuss here,
Right.
because that's a huge problem
Hmm.
now.
Oh yeah.
But that would be probably one of the most important safeguards currently. Another, and this isn't really applicable right now because there's currently a 10-year ban on restrictions for AI. So we can't put any regulations into AI for another 10 years until 2035 because we want the technology to be realized. And because we're
Okay.
competing with China,
Yeah. Interesting.
that's current. Yeah, that's the current landscape.
Just kind
So,
of go full steam ahead, no holds barred until we got something going.
yep,
It's an interesting way to go
basically,
about it.
basically. So that's a very intimidating and scary thought,
Yeah.
which I guess our only response should be prayer, right? That we're guided through this time of uncertainty. In terms of like actual regulations, I'd like for AI videos to have to be watermarked.
Mm. Yeah. That'd be good because I've already seen at least one video of like some stupid Trump video. I think it might have been posted in our Discord. But yeah, it just seems so realistic that I'm like, wait, this is definitely fake, but it looks so real. So yeah, that's some sort of watermark or some sort of identifying something that we can say, okay, no, this is. Um,
AI
It'll
generated.
be interesting to see how like the government and news organizations handle that going forward, like making sure that their material is clearly real, and
Yeah.
not AI generated. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, because like from Donald Trump's perspective, why should he get dressed in the morning when he can just have AI, you
That's
know,
true. I didn't think about it that way, but yeah, the
do a
government just
speech
saying,
for him?
"Hey, I don't want to do a speech, so let's just make an AI model of myself to give that same speech." Yeah, that's
Have you
also true.
noticed like some of his videos posted recently are like kind of just ever so slightly like a little too polished?
No, but maybe that's
Take a
what they're
look at
doing.
it.
Yeah.
Take a look at his Instagram.
Okay.
It's a little too polished. I think they're already doing it.
Dang.
But yeah, I would want AI videos to be watermarked. And the way I would do it is, and I'm probably just speaking gibberish right now, because I don't even understand what I'm saying when I say this. But maybe you can like hook it up to the blockchain where that where there's a serial
Of
number
course, the
in the
blockchain.
blockchain. You know you know what I mean? Where it ties that video back to that particular thing. So now it's like an independent token. That way you can stop some of the fraud. Yeah, I would also say like interpreting actual people's likenesses should also be criminal. Like without their consent, that should be criminal because it's like it's calumny in a way. You know, the amount of backbiting you can do with that technology is ridiculous. Now they could take our videos, right? And they could just have us saying wild racist things, post it out there. We get famous because we're saying wild racist things. And you know, we explode too much. We get the hate, and then nobody cares because everybody's attention span is so low. So now we're just two random racist wild dudes.
Right.
I hope that doesn't get clipped out of context.
I'm sure it will. But when I go to edit this in Riverside, the AI, which figures out, what's what, will title this something crazy. And then say, do you want to clip this? No, I do not.
No, I don't want to go. We're just two wild racist dudes.
Yeah. But yeah, no, yeah, no, it is interesting. So I guess the next logical question is, morally speaking, as Catholics, how are we to approach AI? I got in a discussion with Tommy the other day. I was talking about, like online chatbots, things like that. And because I had the question came to my head, and I'm like, this might be a stupid question, but if I'm talking to an online chatbot and I present myself as like a fake person, like as a character or something, because maybe I'm doing research for a story, I want to see how the chatbot will react to this type of person or something like that. Would that be lying? I wouldn't think it would be because it's a chatbot. It's not a person. And Tommy said, no, I wouldn't think that was lying. Unless, of course, like that chatbot was then going to take that information and then portray that to somebody as truth, somebody else, like a third party. Then I'd be lying through the chatbot maybe. But, that you're talking to a computer. So that wouldn't necessarily be lying. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. But yeah, like it raises other ethical questions that kind of you have to think about.
Well, it boils down to like current Catholic teaching on like what is considered sin. Like, can you simulate sin? Answer is sometimes. Sometimes you can simulate sin, right? Like, let's talk about video games for a second. Am I committing sins in Call of Duty when I'm shooting other players?
Yeah.
No, I'm
Well,
not.
no,
I'm simulating, and it's a game.
Right.
No, I know what you're saying. I
Yeah.
take it that way. But if I'm on playing Grand Theft Auto and I go into the strip club, am I committing a sin? Yes. So it boils down to context. Can I simulate a sin? Sometimes. Sometimes. Yeah.
No, well, but are you simulating the sin because you're engaging in the sin through a medium, like through an interface
Yeah.
of sorts, like
Yeah.
you're committing the sin of, looking at a pornographic image. It's just you're in an animated type thing, but it's still the sin of that.
Pornographic.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's still pornographic regardless. Yeah, no, it's I don't think you can lie to something that isn't a human.
Right.
Or, like real.
Yeah.
Because
you
really
can't
isn't.
deceive it. It's just kind of a thing that's just taking information, generating information.
Because even though I said it's like artificial perception, it's not really even still perceiving anything.
Yeah.
It's just predicting an outcome. Or it's predicting, like a desired outcome from the user, user's input. So you can't really deceive it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would agree. Again, unless you're like using that to train an AI, which then is going to talk to other people with the assumption that you're giving it proper information or something. Like, oh, I'm creating an AI of myself to help people learn something, but then I misrepresent myself or something like that. I give false information. Like, then I'd be lying to the person who delivering this product to, conceptually.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not the AI
Yeah.
that necessarily, it's the person on the other side of that.
Yeah, current best practices within recruitings. I just did a whole seminar on this. Individuals now do like personalized AI videos of like the CEO going to like an applicant, like in the second round of interviews, saying, thank you so much for your time, yada yada yada.
That's so weird.
Is that lying?
Yeah, I don't know.
Is that lying?
I mean, you're just kind of automating a process. I would think, like if you're just thanking them for their
Yeah.
time, in my mind, you're just kind of automating a process that you'd be doing. It's like
Yeah.
it's like writing like having like a stock letter that you send to everybody.
Yeah.
I would
No, I
think it
agree.
was the same
I
type of
agree with
thing.
you. Yeah.
Now, if
But
you were making it seem like you're actually talking to them in real life, and you weren't, you're just an AI, that might be a little different. Like, oh, I'm talking to the CEO. Yeah, he's coming to talk to me. He said he would meet with me, and then it's just the AI. That might be lying, but
well, that's where it gets crazier. They're now doing interviews with hiring managers, AI avatars of the hiring managers that do the entire interview, cookie cutter, because it's programmed to respond to certain things, and then it sends the report back to the actual person the AI is modeled off of.
now
Is that lying?
well, okay, so yeah, so this would be my question: does the applicant know that this is an AI taking the
Good
information?
question.
Because if they do, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing if everyone's in agreement that this is the way it's being done. If they don't
Yeah.
know, I think that gets a little trickier.
Yeah. I think it would be lying if they don't know. Because if this entire time you're just talking to a facade, that's detaches the human connection that
Right.
we're made for.
It's like if I have a twin
So-
brother and somebody thinks they're meeting with me, but they're meeting with my twin brother because I sent him instead. It's like,
Yeah,
okay, well, I'm deceiving
it's
you now.
deception.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's where all this is getting tricky, because there's all sorts of crazy implications that we don't even think about. And I only learned about people making AI avatars off of themselves and literally like doing automated interviews with them, like programmed to large language models, like so that there can be an actual flow of conversation. And so like last week.
Yeah, I just learned about it now.
Yeah, no, it's wild. I would have never thought to do that. But here we are.
I mean, it's quicker, it's
So
more
how
efficient, it's cheaper.
But is it better?
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah,
I wouldn't want to do that if I was a company.
If you have the resources, is cutting corners, if you already have the resources, virtuous?
I guess it depends on what corners we're cutting. Like if we're making the process simpler because we can kind of streamline, maybe not. But if we're actively like, like skimping on our product just to make a couple extra bucks, or making it less good so that it breaks, you have to buy more from us, then no, I would say that that's immoral.
I don't know. The Supreme Court said we have to make profits for the shareholders. That's the sole purpose of a company.
That I feel like that gets very tricky very fast.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I built
that was a Vanderbilt court case. Like back during the Industrial Revolution, we was building all the different
Of
railroads.
course, yeah.
Yeah. What happened is there was this huge surplus of funds that the Vanderbilt company was receiving, so they wanted to do major bonuses to all the individuals who were working on, the train operators, the individual making the railroads, the people building the stations. So he just wanted to like give out bonuses as thank yous. He got sued by the shareholders of the company, and the shareholders won. And since then, this legally defined in America, the sole purpose of a company is to make the shareholders profits, which that is a part of it.
Yeah.
Right. You own this thing, so you must make those who own this thing money.
Right. Yeah.
Because a company needs money to survive. But is that the sole purpose of the company? Like let's talk about like feudalism for a second. Part of the role of the lord of the fief was thought to also employ his subjects.
Right.
So it was also a form of employment.
Yeah.
So when feudalism went away in Britain, largely in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, a lot of people lost their jobs. So.
Yeah. No, I mean that's I guess kind of a good analogy. It is a tricky question, kind of going back to the shareholders, because yeah, I mean, yeah, as you mentioned, like they are owners of the company. So if the company's going to do something, they do have some sort of a say, as
Certainly. Yeah.
owners. But yeah, saying that that's the sole purpose, it seems a little trickier. Like just not as, just not like I don't know. I guess I'd say like
It's not socially just
right,
as the
yeah,
Catholic Church
yeah.
would define.
Like yes, they should have a say in what the company does, but
Mhm.
the purpose of the company isn't just to make them rich.
Yeah. Yeah. Oftentimes the truth is a little more nuanced than one answer, unless, we're talking about strict sin, like yes, it's wrong to kill,
Right.
to
To
murder,
murder, right? Because then kill
to murder.
again is it self defense? That could be a little different.
Exactly,
But murder,
exactly. So
yes,
there is nuance. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, in writing, how have you utilized AI?
I actually haven't gotten into using AI that much because I'm kind of new to AI in general. Like like I was saying earlier, like I'm very much like this newfangled like that's been me up to a point until I started using ChatGPT just as a better form
Yeah.
of Google to ask it
Yeah.
questions about things that I wasn't sure about. Um, just as a bit of a side tangent, like I like classical music, specifically the Romantic period. I find that music very enjoyable. I like the Russian composers, the French composers, the German composers. But as many times as I try to figure out what the difference is between any of those styles. It just never makes sense to me. So I got the idea one day. Let's ask ChatGPT and give them specific composers and like compare and contrast all these. And it came out with a very well explained answer, which these are more like this, and this guy does this, and the French are more like this, and the Germans and the Russians, and it made more sense to me. And I'm like, wow, this I could never figure this out by just googling any of this. So, so yeah.
Yeah.
That being said, just over the past couple of months, I've kind of really gotten into using it. The other day when I was just kind of talking to it about AI and future, it got into some kind of like world building ideas. So that's the first time I kind of like what would ChatGPT think about this, and what do I think about how that would be in a story and stuff like that. So that's the first time I really kind of engaged with it. I'd be interested to try what you were saying about the editing. Seeing what it can do with that, and
Yeah.
just using it as like a way to research. Just become more knowledgeable. Like obviously it doesn't know everything, and sometimes it's wrong, so you have to be aware of that. But just
Oh yeah.
using it as a way to kind of fill in some gaps where I kind of know like what I need to know, but I just need a little more so that I'll know if it's kind of giving me bull crap, but still it'll kind of help me develop out my thinking a little better.
And there's ways you can personalize your own ChatGPT account. Like in the personalizations, I have specific guardrails saying, particularly when it comes to my writing, I don't want any fake praise. Just give me raw information. Analyze the writing style, analyze the prose, and give ways that I can make the sentences clearer. I can make the sentences more. I can reduce like instances of purple prose. I just want raw feedback that's unbiased, and that way you actually end up getting less of like the fake praise, because that's another thing
Yeah.
AI
Oh yeah.
does really
Yeah.
well. It praise it like you sneeze and it says you're the greatest thing
Right.
since sliced
Oh, that's
bread.
such a great question you asked. So insightful. And it's dangerous because you're kind of like,
Yeah.
well, maybe like it
I'm
gets
so
in there.
intelligent.
Yeah.
You're sitting there like, nice. This thing is like feeding you grapes
Yeah.
while you're sitting there.
It's wild.
Yeah. But so many individuals are just sitting there. I actually saw this one trend that was going on where people were asking AI or ChatGPT to describe or to visualize what it's like interacting with them. So all these different people were getting like different responses. There was this one lady who got an image of like ChatGPT, like a robot holding a phone, like with a frown, like staring into it. And then she goes, "Why are you frowning?" And then the AI said something like, "Oh, you perceive that?"
Interesting.
So it basically was calling her dumb.
Yeah. Dude. The robot's got no chill.
I know.
So, question about
Yeah.
you saying you use it for like editing stuff. So is it just ChatGPT that you're using to do that, like OpenAI ChatGPT, like the standard? You have an account on there and you're giving it to that? Because I guess because the issue in my head is it taking your story and socking that away somewhere that's technically now, you know, OpenAI's property in some weird way, shape, or form by something in the terms and conditions that we don't read because it's super long and dull.
So there are databases of conversations, obviously, but I believe because each individual silo within ChatGPT, because you have your chat history, they have to be stored somewhere within the cloud. But like context is also key in terms of AI, which is why you also never really want to put like personal information into the thing because it gets stored anyway, and that's just another liability for you. But again, context for property is key. If you're using something to edit, that's fine because you're the main artistic driving force. If you're using something for generation, that's where
Yeah, it gets
things
trickier.
get a little tricky. Yeah, yeah. So I'm not necessarily concerned from that front, and I never really send it huge samples anyway. So I try to keep my stuff a little more
A little concise.
off to the side,
Yeah.
a little more off to the side, a little more concise. That's just me, though. Do what other AI tools do I use? I've actually started using Notebook LM a lot.
Okay. I know you mentioned that, but I have
Notebook,
no idea what that is. So
yeah.
please
So
explain.
Notebook, yeah, you got it, you got it. So Notebook L. This is turning into a advertisement for AI
Yeah.
technology. The things that don't change. We've now sold out to AI. But basically, what it does is you open up a notebook, they call it, within the user AI or the user interface, and you give it a parameters of like a topic you're trying to research. So for a project I was working on, I needed to learn a lot about the Essene Jews. So what I did, like first century particularly. So what I did was I gave it parameters for I want Levantine genetic and epigenetic facial structure data. I want clothing of the Essenes. I want the practices of the Essenes from credible historical accounts. And then I got like 20 different sources that I was then able to start doing in-depth research, all localized in one platform. So it doesn't pull information out of the sources. So another thing I could do was I could literally upload entire books into this thing. So I could upload Brant Petrie's The Jewish Roots of Mary
Yeah.
into this
That's
this
pretty
thing,
cool.
and
Yeah.
it would source all the information it got there when I was generating different responses for different points of research. And then what you could do is you can create mind maps. And the mind maps are basically like a bunch of different branching off tags of information where you can individually research all the different tags until you kind of get it. And then this is the most wild part. All the information you can put in there, you then can hit generate a podcast, and it'll create a podcast of all your sources, basically explaining the information audibly
That's wild.
with two individuals talking about
Yeah.
it back and forth.
That is so
And it
wild.
sounds so human. So, like when I was researching moral theology, because I want to do an episode on moral theology, particularly Alphonse Liguori, what I did was I created a notebook of like all these different sources on him. I literally created like a 2 hour long podcast of these people talking back and forth. I've listened to it like 5 times. It's a fabulous tool for trying to learn something. So when I'm doing research, I don't really go to ChatGPT unless it's like a Google search. When I'm doing research, I go to Google Notebook LM.
Google Notebook LM.
Yeah. Yeah. You can upload books,
Yeah.
sources, websites, medical journals, like everything. And it's wild.
Yeah,
I'm
no, it
telling
sounds
you.
so helpful though, just to be able to
Yeah.
help condense. Like I think that's one thing. Again, maybe the specifics is a little you could argue about it, but like that type of idea, like I feel like that's something that AI could be really good at, like helping us distill so much knowledge into a way that we can take and then do what we need to do with, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. while I don't believe that everybody, and this is including myself, I'm not trying to make an us and them sort of situation. So when you hear this, please don't perceive that. I don't believe everybody needs to have an opinion on everything,
Yeah.
myself included.
Yes, absolutely. Me also
But
included.
there,
I'm not just saying, oh, absolutely, you shouldn't include your.
but what I am saying is we currently live in a time where ignorance, willful ignorance, is a choice. If you're ignorant of something genuinely, that's really no fault of your own. But if you're willfully ignorant in a topic, that is your own choice. We now can learn and digest information so much faster. And while that's a scary thought to be able to process a lot of information, and there are some drawbacks in that, like memory retention is going down ever since Google, and I think it's just going to get exponentially worse with AI. But we go through so much more information daily, and intellectually, I feel like since the 2000s, individuals have gotten so much more well-rounded, where like the main apologetic talking points aren't really what they used to be.
Yeah.
Like even like Catholic talking points, like one of the big ones I remember from the early 2000s, early 2010s even was, oh, there's over 40,000 different branches of Protestant churches. There's really not. I mean, there's like seven main Protestant churches that are kind of like all in communion with one another. And then you just have a bunch of like evangelical churches pop up everywhere.
Right. And of course, the objection that that
Yeah.
statistic comes from a specific study that also considered the Catholic Church like seven different churches and all of that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I think that's fair. And I think that,
Yeah.
go ahead and go off of that. Like, I think Jimmy Akins talked about this a lot, where like, he talked about like the types of questions people get, they get at Catholic Answers on like, call-in days. And the, 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 the simpler to answer kind of objections that were popular in the 90s, they've been answered so many times now by Catholic Answers and groups like it that now everyone kind of knows them. So the questions that come in tend to be a lot more nuanced and have a lot of kind of other corollaries and things like that. Because yeah, the general information about Catholicism is so much, it's just better, and it's just more readily available. They are able to kind of head off those very simple kind of, oh, you guys worship Mary. Obviously, they still get those questions, but generally, I mean, people could just kind of Google, oh, do Catholics worship Mary? And you'll get like 15 articles by Catholic Answers saying no, or
Yeah.
explain the type of worship or something like that to kind of clarify.
Or even I can just open up my phone right now. Let me open up
And
ChatGPT.
ask
I'll put it through the
ChatGPT.
camera. Do Catholics? Actually, I'll do a voice thing because that'll be easier. Do Catholics worship Mary?
Catholics don't worship Mary in the same way they worship God. They honor and venerate her because she's the mother of Jesus, and they believe she holds a special place in salvation history. The distinction is that worship or adoration is reserved for God alone, while Mary is given a high level of reverence and respect.
Thank you.
That sounds so conversational, like a real person. At the end, it started to get a little funny, but like that voice sounds so realistic. It's insane
Yeah.
where AI
I
is
always
going.
say thank you, by the way,
Oh yeah, me
because
too.
when Skynet
Yeah.
takes over,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want to be one of the good
Yeah,
humans.
no,
you
no.
know?
While Tommy is a battery, we'll be here, living a nice life. What's the name of the guy from the Matrix who turns and joins the robots, like Cypher or
Neo?
something like that?
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I haven't seen it. I've never seen The Matrix.
The first one's fine. I
But
haven't seen the rest, but I've heard the rest aren't as good.
fair enough. Fair enough. But you see, like it's so much easier to get that information now. So all you have to do is just ask, and you have that information. So there is a thing of willful ignorance. You can totally 100% be willfully ignorant, but that is on you.
Yeah.
How do you see yourself incorporating large language models in particular, or different AI tools into your daily life? Where do you see the most use? Where do you see the most benefit? And where do you see it morally aligning with your faith the best?
That's a good, multifaceted question. I mean,
Yeah.
it's definitely has its place, as we kind of already talked about, where getting specific questions answered that you might have on something. Like I've used it a couple times now, like during work, just trying to figure something out when I'm coding or something like that. And like it's one thing to Google how to do this thing in this language, or how does Java do X, Y, Z. And you'll get like a Stack Overflow answer that might give you the exact question, or might have been asked and never answered 17 years ago. But you ask AI, and then it's able to kind of, ChatGPT will be able to give you like the whole explanation. So that's been very helpful to kind of make my work a little more efficient. And then, we already mentioned like editing or something like that. That could be very useful. When it comes to faith, that's an interesting question because, part of you wants to say like, oh, well, that is no play. Like I'm just going to do faith, keep that separate. But yeah, I don't know.
But do you drive to church?
Yeah.
You're using technology.
That is true. That is a
too.
good point.
You know what I mean? That is a transportation
Yeah,
tool.
we take that for granted, because it's been around for so long.
We grew up
but,
with
yeah.
it. Yeah.
It's interesting because I think the Catholic world is trying to figure out the best way to use AI. Like I think, was it Matt Fradd is kind of co-founder of Truthly, which is like an AI version of ChatGPT for Catholicism, or a Catholic version of ChatGPT. I said AI version of ChatGPT. That makes no sense. But like a Catholic,
A large language
exactly.
model.
Which I think could be very helpful because it's trained by Catholics to be a specific Catholic tool. So that can be something that's a little more maybe trustworthy to kind of figure out those greater questions of the faith.
Hopefully, it doesn't tell people they can baptize.
Right.
people with Gatorade.
Father Justin was a bit of a was an attempt.
It was an attempt.
But yeah, so
You got a couple of bumps along the way.
you got to start
always.
somewhere, man. Was it a good idea to start right off the bat with a priest that does that? Probably not. But I think Catholic Answers has even kind of come out.
I
and said,
love the
"Whoops."
enthusiasm.
Yeah.
man. I love the enthusiasm. But you were saying,
But no, I mean,
how
like,
do you?
yeah, like if we have tools that are specifically built with that in mind, like you have apps, prayer apps, but then you had Hallow, which was very dedicated to a very specific type of curated prayer experience. Where you have guests and all these different prayers and these recordings, and so that was very helpful in that way. So if we can have more AI versions of that in the Catholic space, I think that could be very helpful. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's something we need to take slow, but it's something that could, I believe that it could be a great evangelization tool because I think the internet, for all its issues, Catholicism, out of all the religions, I think has won out the best with that because we have the truth on our side. So all of the what is it? Like all of the Protestant objections that are so baseline, like that were getting kind of shouted from the pulpits back in 1852 that because no one met a Catholic, oh, well, of course Catholics believe all these crazy things. You can't do that anymore because you could just go Google it and find out, oh, that's not true. So yeah.
James White gets clowned
Oh my
whenever
gosh.
he says anything. Whenever he says like anything that's just so provably
Yeah.
false, he just gets clowned now.
Like-
which didn't happen back.
No,
in the
not
day.
back in the 90s when he was debating Jerry Matitix in 1991 or whatever the heck, as he always brings up in every single debate. But yeah, like I remember watching that debate he did with Jimmy Akin on Purgatory a couple of years ago, and it was just like Jimmy clobbered him, because just kind of like, oh no, and then Joe Heschmeyer went after him recently and was like, no, that's logically doesn't make any sense. Like about I forget what the passage was, but it's just like, no, your assumption of that Bible verse just doesn't make sense. Yeah, so yeah, it's. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of fruit that if we attack it correctly, that we can, get from this.
Yeah. Well, another really good tool of AI is it's very good at helping us sort through our thoughts.
Yeah.
And providing guidelines to it. So, I could even see, like, priests work very hard on their some priests, most priests, most priests work very hard on their homilies. A lot of them would actually benefit from a narrative formatting. You know what I mean? To help make the homily more engaging for the audience, keep them more engaged. Like one of the criticisms with the Catholic Church is the homily is always kind of lackluster. Like when you hear the criticisms from outside the church, they might benefit from putting their ideas, what they have written down, and then systematically reformatting it so it's more narrative driven. That could be a tool that's utilized for the faith, or, implementation of the tool, and it's no different from using word check in a certain extent.
Yeah.
Because let's also face it, not everybody has skills in narrative storytelling. That's not something every priest should be required to have, because it's not the main requirement of their priesthood. It's an added bonus, but primarily their job is to offer sacrifice.
Right.
That's
offer
their
the
job.
sacraments.
They have to, they have to be able to offer the sacraments. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just the you'd have to be careful with it and just make sure it's configured in such a way that it just doesn't distill every homily into the same thing. Like
Yeah.
if ChatGPT starts to get like, this is how homilies are, then it just kind of, they might have different material, but they're all kind of structured and they feel the same. Like they're just kind of, they become cookie cutter in the fact that ChatGPT kind of does
Yeah.
their thing. So, which I think
Yeah.
if you're careful about it and you're intentional about making sure it's just like the editor and doesn't try to be the writer, that's fine.
Yeah.
But it's just making sure that we're aware of that,
Oh,
Yeah.
100%. There's always that double-edged sword of there has to be that human input. Otherwise, you're going to get the artificial perceiver and predictor, not an artificial intelligence that's actually writing your homily. Another great tool is research. You can create closed systems like Google LM with something like the Catechism. You could do a
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Just a quick question. So Google LM works kind of in its own, it's siloed to what you give it. Okay. Just want to clarify. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it doesn't pull
Yeah, no,
outside
that's pretty
sources.
cool.
So, like, if you want to learn more about the faith, but like, let's say you're a visual learner, so like the mind map's going to be very helpful for you. Upload the entire catechism in there, and maybe like a commentary on it if you're feeling extra spicy. You can create podcasts on it. You can create mind maps to help you study. You can create study guides. You can ask it questions and it can respond. So it's like this personalized learning experience that caters to the way you learn. Not everybody is like learns properly via just reading information. Some people need to like get their hands dirty into something. Some people need to listen to it. Some people need to see it. So I don't inherently think it's wrong to have different forms of learning for different individuals just because we're wired differently.
Even I learn in different ways depending on the material. I might read something
Exactly.
or listen to something that might work better. Yeah.
Yeah, entirely. So if you're using something like that to learn the faith, I think that's a great tool you can incorporate. Like even if you wanted to like put a saint's diary in there, just so you can glean like little nuggets out of that, that's another thing you can do. Really, where you're limited and where you're limited is use it as a tool to pull information towards you that you're looking for. Like it's like a advanced Google search, like what Chris was saying. So as long as you have those guardrails in there and you're double checking that it's not hallucinating, because they do hallucinate every now and then, it could be a very awesome tool you can implement into deepening and enriching your faith via learning about it. So my thoughts on it.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. And as long as we're keeping, I keep saying, keeping an eye on the ways it could go bad. I think that there is a lot we can kind of get from this. And I am simultaneously terrified and hopeful at the prospect of AI for the future.
It's a scary position to be in.
Yeah.
You could almost say it's like a qubit superposition.
Yes, exactly.
I'm sorry, that was corny.
That's all good, man. But I'm looking at the time. Do you want to kind of start wrapping up? Because I think that's kind of a good place to kind of.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Unless you have something else you want to say.
No, that pretty much wraps everything for me.
All right. Well,
thank you all for listening. We're going to end today's session with a prayer in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And glory be to the Father, to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit.
it was in the beginning, is now, and will be forever. Amen.
Amen. Go be holy, everybody.